If we want to get the best audio performance from a car audio system, we need to do our wiring properly, and in this video I have some tips for you. I'm currently working on installing all of this gear into a truck, and in one of the previous videos I built and wired this amp rack. We now need to connect that amp rack and all of its gear to the vehicle's battery and head unit. I've got everything connected now. Let me bring you guys up to speed. So let's kick things off with talking about what we did with our speaker wires. I ended up going active in the front, so this 2-channel amplifier provides power for the tweeters, and this 2-channel amplifier provides power for the woofers. For the speaker wire here, I used this 14-gauge twisted Karma speaker wire from New Concepts. New Concepts is one of our sponsors here at the channel, so you're going to see their wiring used throughout this build. For the power and ground, I used their Colossus flex wire, and then for the RCA wires, I used their crystal cables, and they have a lot of different distribution blocks that they make. I have a fused version and a ground version here. If you guys want to learn more about New Concepts, they have a ton of different gear that makes it really handy to install a car audio system. Check out the link down in the video description. On the speaker wires here, since it would be easy to mix these up when you disconnect them from the amplifier during servicing, I do make sure that I label each of the leads. So here we have the front left tweeter, front right tweeter, and these labels are just made with a label maker. Here's the woofer labels here, and then just to make sure that those labels never come off, I actually take a piece of clear heat shrink tubing, put it over the label, and shrink it down. The speaker wires come out of the amplifiers and they run down through this channel. You can see I've taken all the trim off the side of the vehicle here just to have access and clearance to all of this. And you can see that I've zip tied these together and kept everything nice and bundled consistently. Another thing I like to pay attention to, I have 4 different wires that are going down this side. I like to keep them kind of in the same configuration, kind of in a square configuration like they are right now. I don't want them twisting around each other because it just kind of looks messy and bunched up. So I take the time to really make sure that they lay nicely together and stay together as they go through the path. You can see they continue up here. This is the front seat now, and then they come up into the dash area where they're distributed to each of the different speakers. Now on the A-pillars here, I installed a tweeter speaker up inside the A-pillar. If you guys want to go back and check out that previous video here on the channel, you can. But what I wanted to make sure I do is, the stock speaker, it has a nice little harness that makes it easy to unplug so that we can take off this A-pillar if we need to. So I wanted to make sure that I wasn't making a permanent connection to my speaker wire here. I wanted to have some sort of connection I could undo, so that's why I used these connectors here that you see on screen. I've done a full video about these before on the channel as well. What we need to do is we need to tin each of the connections and prepare them with some solder, and then we can solder the wiring into each of those connections. We then finish everything up, we add some heat shrink, and now you can see I have a nice connection that I can easily undo and reattach if need be, if I need to access these speakers. Now we of course need a way to get the signal from our aftermarket head unit back to our digital signal processor in the back of the vehicle, and that's why I have this RCA wire that you see right here. This RCA wire is a 4-channel wire, so you can see we actually have 4 connections there, and I needed a little bit more length out of it. They do make a longer version of this RCA cable, but it would have resulted in kind of having to bunch up the cable because it would have been too long in that case. So rather than using a wire that's too long, I just added these little extensions here, and you can see with the couplers here, I wanted to make sure that obviously we don't want these to come disconnected on accident, so I used some heat shrink to shrink everything together so that these can't pull apart. Now these are kind of just hanging loose for the time being because I wanted to show you guys, but I will wrap these with some closed cell foam just to make sure that these aren't vibrating around back here behind this panel. We don't want them, making any noise like that, so that closed cell foam will avoid that. There's also a nice connector here that I can use to zip tie these so that they're not moving around. Now I should mention, if you guys want to see all of the detailed wiring I did when I built this amplifier rack, of course you can go back and watch that video here on the channel, but there are a couple of other connections we need to make that go elsewhere in the vehicle. One of these connections is right here for the DSP for the remote level control. I wanted to go down the other side of the vehicle with that, so we come here and we go under the carpet and then we go through this channel. That's the same case for our blue remote turn-on lead that comes over here and it connects right here with a quick connector. Now normally you would use that remote turn-on lead to turn on all your amplifiers and your DSP, and it's more than capable of providing that small amount of current to do all of these devices, but I wanted to have additional capacity, so I used this 30 amp relay, which gives me a nice additional 30 amp turn-on circuit here that will only be on when the audio system is on. So what's nice about that is I can add cooling fans, I could add LED lighting, I could add any other accessory that I'd like to, simply enough by connecting to this fuse block. Now we of course also needed to provide power and ground to this amplifier rack. Starting with the power side here, this goes down through this hole underneath the vehicle and then runs along the frame. From the frame, it comes up here next to the factory fuse block so that I still have access to that, and then it connects to our aftermarket fuse that we made this custom bracket for a couple of videos ago. Now, why did I go under the vehicle and alongside the frame? Well, first of all, if I wanted to go through the nice, easy to use grommet on this vehicle, it's over on the driver's side, so that would have been extra wire to add to that length to go to the back. The other reason is this wire channel here, it does have some room, and I probably would have been okay to run 0 gauge wire through there, but it would have completely filled up all the rest of the capacity for this wire channel on the passenger side of the vehicle. I didn't want to do that, so I'd rather have it underneath the vehicle. If we take a look underneath the vehicle here, I just wanted to show this to you guys. That power wire is wrapped with wire loom to protect it. It has that plastic corrugated loom, and then we've also secured it in place with these extremely heavy-duty zip ties. These are rated at 250 pounds each. There's definitely not going to be any issues with holding that wire in place. And as I mentioned, there's a nice rubber grommet that we were able to go through right here without making any additional holes in the vehicle. For the ground wire, I've connected to this factory location right here. Now, I know this is a highly debated topic since this particular truck has that aluminum body. Can you actually use this factory ground? I actually have a couple of friends in the car audio industry that have done tons and tons of systems in these F-150s, systems that have far, far more power than this one right here, and they've had absolutely zero issues with using this ground location. Now, of course, I wanted to verify that this was a good location for myself, so I ran a test that you guys can do. I covered that test in a previous video here on the channel, but I was able to determine that yes, this is in fact a great grounding location. You can see that just to ensure we have good connectivity between our ground wire and the vehicle, I did remove some of the paint material there, and then I wanted to make sure that I covered up that newly exposed metal, so I used some dielectric grease on top of that exposed surface. Now, I probably didn't need to do this, but just for some additional peace of mind, I did upgrade the ground connection from the battery down to the frame. This is very easy to do on this truck. You can actually see that ground connection right here. And by upgrading that wiring here, we now have a nice full connected path back to the battery. And again, you'll notice that obviously I used that 0 gauge wire size, much like I did for the positive side, and I wanted to make sure that this wire was good and protected here in the engine bay. So again, I used that corrugated plastic tubing along with some special exterior protection tape on the outside. So in the next videos, we need to determine our plan for our subwoofer box that's going to hold these 4 10-inch subwoofers and get it built. Remember next time you are wiring your car audio system to check out show sponsor New Concepts for all of your wiring needs. A special thanks to them, along with Anthony, Mike, Mo, Jerry, Marcos, William, and the rest of the Patreon membership team. A big thanks to all those guys for making these videos possible, and thank you for tuning in and watching.